And so the benefits to you of writing in this format are, first of all, that you can reach this known group of targeted subscribers. When you write your journal article, you are reaching a group of your peers. When you write the newsletter article, you may choose to be reaching a different group than who you access through your journal article. And so it's usually a known, described group that you may have an interest in or even be a part of, and where you can reap additional benefits by sharing your science with it. And we'll talk a little more about that. And another benefit is this notion that you can make a call to action in a newsletter. In a journal article, there really isn't a place to make a call to action, but say that you, for example, are trying to recruit people to your lab, or maybe you're starting a new initiative and you'd like to find some collaborators. Those are the kinds of things you can put in a newsletter. And so we'll look at some examples of the types of calls to action that newsletters accomplish. You can publish it quickly and often because of this much quicker turnaround process for an article, and because they're shorter and less intensive and are not necessarily substantiated with references. So it's a small product that can point out to something broader. Maybe you have just published a new article that you're really excited about. You could write a newsletter piece, and that newsletter piece would then point out to the published journal article. And so in that way, it can point to related resources that people otherwise may not see. For example, let's say you are writing a journal article on desert ecology in the American Southwest, and you know that a bunch of your peers are going to read that article because it's published in a journal that they are subscribers to. But what about other people? Maybe you would really like to have some people who are in agriculture read it because of some of the conflicts in the American Southwest between agriculture and ecological considerations. You're not going to reach them through that peer-reviewed journal article, but you could reach them through a newsletter. You might even find a newsletter that deals with Southwestern U.S. agriculture, and you might publish a little article there that then points people to these bigger findings. So it really opens up a different potential than a journal article. It's not an instead of, it's in addition to. And let me walk through each of these things and give you some examples. So in terms of reaching targeted subscribers, here's something from the APA, the American Psychological Association. And they, for example, publish a number of different themes of newsletters. This is just one of the themes, this Aging Issues newsletter. So subscribers can go in and choose which theme they're interested in and subscribe to one or more of their newsletter offerings. And so here you can see that this publication has to do with improving the health and well-being of older adults. So there are your targeted subscribers. Those keywords tell you right there who you would reach if you were to write for this APA Aging Issues newsletter. You would reach professionals who are working on the health and well-being of older adults. This is something called a Eureka Alert, which you may be familiar with. AAAS publishes this, and it's a newsletter that sends out the most popular news from around the world through the AAAS website. And so it's called Eureka Alert. If you think Eureka, a new discovery's been made, it's playing off that idea. So it's going to be the most popular current news stories. And so here, if you look, it's a weekly selection, so it's coming out on a weekly cycle. And Eureka Alert, it says it's the global source for science news, and it tells you what categories: science, technology, health, and the environment. So here, if you were to write something to go into AAAS Eureka Alert, then you would know that this is going to have a global reach, that they're dealing with international news stories, and therefore likely international subscribers. I had talked about how in a newsletter you can make a call to action. So this, for example, is the Federal Association of Scientists in the US. And this is a particular initiative they had, the Congressional Science Policy Initiative. And you can see here how they're making a call to action. They say, help the Senate by examining the federal response to COVID-19. So this is during the COVID-19 epidemic. They were asking people to send questions in so that then their lawmakers could take those to negotiation of science policy with the coronavirus task force. So when you look on there in their newsletter, you'll find different calls to action depending on the events of the time. And this, for example, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. This is their newsletter. It's called Journey, very appropriate. And if you look, I think you can pick out their call to action there. Support science research, right? At the bottom. And if you click on support science research, then that's a place to give money to the organization or to particular initiatives. So that shows you a couple of the types of calls to action that you'll find in a newsletter. And remember that a newsletter allows you to publish quickly and often. This here is an entire newsletter piece from the American Psychological Association. It's a profile of a psychologist. And so you can see it's very short. It wouldn't take very long to write. And so that's one type of quick content that newsletters will accept, is if you wanted to profile somebody in your lab or if somebody wanted to profile you, for example. If you look here, this is the MIT Technology newsletter. And by the way, you see it says it's delivered straight to your inbox. Again, a real benefit of newsletters, that they pop right into inboxes of subscribers. And here you can make a choice between different frequencies that you receive the newsletter. But if we look at the one on the left, the download, you'll note that that one is daily. So that means every day that newsletter is popping into inboxes of people who select that. Now that's possible because, again, a newsletter is a compilation typically of things that many people write, and the newsletter is bringing them together into a format. So that allows it to be really agile in its publication. And then we talked about pointing to related resources and the potential there. So this is the Harvard Gazette. It's a newsletter for alumni, students, faculty, maybe it goes to donors. And you can see they have a couple of points here. And by point, I mean there's a link out to something broader. You can see the blue link out where it says follow the Gazette's coverage of the ongoing protests. So you know that if you go there, you're going to see something about systemic racism protests. And then they have a coronavirus updates, because again, this was the news at this time. Coronavirus updates, where it will take you to the university's website and you can get the latest statistics on coronavirus. So that's your point out to something broader. And so again, as a scientist, you might want to point out to a recent publication. You could point out to a podcast that you did. You could point to a magazine article. You could point to an upcoming conference. You could point to the archives of a conference that's already happened. And this, for example, is from Northeastern University, from one of their institutes. It's called the Social Science Environmental Health Research Institute. And what I want you to notice, if you look on the left there, is that you see a number of point outs stacked up there. So you see one is about a new book on diversifying power. One is about an article that won an award. And then you have a race equity discussion point out. These point outs actually, in this case, go to external websites. So they cause you to leave the Northeastern University SSEHRI website. So again, this newsletter is a compilation of small information that's pointing out to larger information for people that want to go into depth. So it's really an assembly of information.